You had a choice to make. The only way to compete with liars in copy is to become a bigger liar.
If you're in the direct response space, email is our bread and butter, right? That's where like the money is made.
Look at your numbers, and this is a big thing. The numbers don't lie. Leads, conversion, whatever.
A product can exist and sell without marketing. Marketing cannot exist without product. Marketing without good product is called a scam. To compete on economics is basically like to compete on trade-offs. And so if you look at what economics means, it basically means that to allocate scarce resources, right? So remember, acquisition of capital, allocation of capital, multiplication of capital, it's the same thing. It's like, but on like a personal level, like, so it's like they acquire resources and they allocate resources, right? Yeah. So money. So they acquire money through work, time, whatever. Most people have time, business, whatever. Then it's like, how do they allocate that money? So one of the things that most people get wrong when it comes to selling and marketing is that they come with this premise that it's like they just want to get a yes, right? So I do a lot of things differently. Like, well, shit, most of the thing I do is completely like, it's not what everybody else thinks, a completely different way of thinking, but that's why I get the best results for people. So when it comes to economics, it's like, what's the trade-off, right? Like what's the trade-off? So for every time you get somebody to say yes to giving you money, simultaneously you're getting them to say no to a whole lot of things, right? So for example, if I ask you to give me $1,000 for something, I'm asking you not to buy, maybe a new phone, maybe an Apple Watch, maybe, a thing for your son, maybe a thing for your mother. I'm asking you not to buy that TV. I'm asking you a lot of other things. But the thing is, like, I don't know what I'm asking you, right? I don't know what I'm asking you. And so the key is, like, when it comes to sale, is to get the no first before you can say the yes. Then the yes becomes a lot easier, right? And so if you look at every single funnel, it's nothing more than just like a series of decisions, right? That's it. A funnel is a series of decisions. However, when you have a lot of decisions, then you accumulate decision fatigue. So decision fatigue is accumulated by the fact that they have to compute trade-offs, right? They have to think about it, right? And that's why if you look at the upsell path, it always goes like this, because they get tired of making do I want this? Do I want that? Do I want that? What, et cetera, right? And so the basis of making an irresistible offer, I shared this in a group, is like, would you trade anything in the world for this, right? I had to make them. And the answer is yes, a trade, right? So, that's kind of the idea, right? And how do people trade this for that, to that, to that, to that, right? And so this goes really deep. There's like, it's like a lot of depth to it. Right? And then there was this other thing where, as far as like economics, you have economics of attention, right? Yeah. And so in today's world, what's happening is people love to buy because it feels really good to buy, right? Like it's a good feeling, right? Because we can choose what makes us feel good, but we hate being sold to, because that implies that we don't get to choose what makes us feel good, right? Yeah. And so in today's world, sales processes, this is what I talked about earlier, it's like all processes stop working. Like, so the one of the fundamental tenets of direct response and conversions is that you have to be in control of the sales process. So when I have like, famous YouTubers or you TikTokers or influencers, whatever, come to me, the first question I ask them is, your sales like this? Like, like a steady sale, like, you ever seen like medical charges, like, or is it like beep, like that, right? And if they're like this, I'm like, you're not in control of the sales process, because you can see on these peaks, they're deciding when they want to buy. So you got to have a steady thing where money always comes in. That's how you know you control the sales process, right? You can't be in control of the sales process if they know what the sales process is. So you always have to hide the sales process. So if you look at the history of direct response, and this is why you should study supertext, is because back in the day, like with John E. Kennedy, they looked at newspapers and they were like, oh, this is shit. Simple question. What if we made our advertisement look like an article? Would more people read it? Yes. And so they did it, and a lot of people read it. Then Gary Halbert was, rest in peace, was like, well, if we make a sales letter look like a letter, if you look at the coat of arms letter, it's like Dear Nancy or whatever, right? It's a letter. It's not a sales letter, right? If you look at an infomercial, it's not an infomercial. It's a TV commercial late at night. If you look at webinars, they're not webinars. They're so you always have some type of innovation that hides the sales process. So the first is hiding the sales process, right? Second thing is, so you always have to decide the sales process, but what do you hide it in, right? The secondary thing is that you have to look at innovation in marketing. So where innovation in marketing comes from is basically this idea of it's some type of technology that enables us to communicate, right? So if you look at, like, as humans have a need for information that gives us safety and security. So we're always like scanning the environment for information. And that's why we have novelty in the brain, because novelty of information, novelty of data, survival, right? And so that's why TikTok is addictive, because it could just more data, amongst other things. And so what we do largely is that we, you pay attention to something new that emerges, right? Such as a podcast, right? And you pay attention to what are people paying attention to, right? So in that particular thing, we took from webinars and we say, well, what if we just package that into a thing that looks like a podcast? Let's create a new format, right? So we did it, and then it's crushing it. So right now, as I'm recording this, I have a client in Italy. His name is Alex, great guy, right? he's using all the stuff I'm telling you this, and like all the stuff I thought in Fast Forward. He's literally spending $1,000 a day, euros, and making 15,000 back a day on the front end. No coaching, nothing in the finance space, by the way, finance space, right? 15x. It's insane. So that's what it looks like, right? They're not aware of the sales process. You basically process it, basically then they absorb the sales process, right? So if you can get them to absorb the sales process, you can increase it, right? And I'm the master at that. And so there's nobody better than me in the world at that. So what ends up happening is like when you hide the sales process, then you can download that data info and you can do all sorts of other things once you get in the mind, like change thoughts and beliefs and, and change, pull emotions, move things around, but you got to get in there first, right? And to get in there, so that's what we did with that guy. We basically changed the sales process. We look at this new thing. I looked at his audience and I said, shit, man, well, these guys, we'll spend 3 hours watching Joe Rogan. Let's just make something looked at. And then they were like, okay, but there was a nuance, which is basically like this idea of big idea copy and mechanistic copy, right? And so I've talked shit about this, and I will continue to talk shit about it forever. And I've had famous marketers try to challenge me on it. And they're like, well, big idea is great, and I'm like, well, how the fuck is it great if you have to spend 2 weeks finding out why the product is good? I don't need 2 weeks to tell you why this is good. It's like this. If something isn't good, the product itself, so we go back to the beginning of the call, which is transformative value, right? Something that transforms. If the product is transformative, we don't need a big idea to demonstrate that. It just works. So people buy for the product, right? So a product can exist and sell without marketing. Marketing cannot exist without product. Marketing without good product is called a scam, right? That's it. And that's why people complain to the FTC and stuff, because it's like marketing. Again, beginning, what's the formula for creating a brand? Experience exceeding expectation, right? So if the marketing goes and promises stuff, basically what ends up happening is that the expectation exceeds experience. You have complaints, right? That's it.
What are those couple of things that you're like, man, everybody needs to be doing this and half the people don't?
Yeah, another good question. Well, you can have an amazing piece of copy that gets the person right to the offer, right? And the business owner thinks, in terms of hamburgers, this is the biggest, juiciest hamburger, you could ever eat. Yet they left off the meat patty. Right? They're giving you lettuce on a bun. Now, there are certain people who will like that, myself not. Their offer's weak. So you've got to, when I mentor anybody, when I'm writing copy, now I don't write copy as such, I take projects on and feed into my writers and oversee it. I got to look at the offer first. I've got to, in my mind, be 100% satisfied that offer is the strongest offer it can be to be able to get their client results. If that means me reworking the offer, coming up with suggestions to strengthen it up, like make the foundation of the offer stronger, then that's exactly what I do. I've always done that. Whereas a lot of copywriters just take the client's offer and that's it. The offer is where a lot of the problems are, let alone, the headlines generally buried somewhere in that funnel sales copy.
So essentially you're saying most people or most, offer owners need to go back to the basics and look at their offer, really like the bells and whistles of how the offer is structured.
Yes. And also to understanding where your clients are coming from or who's already got your clients before you. So one of my old clients, was in the pest control business with a partner in Florida. And I was mentoring him a little bit. And I said, well, where do you get they were doing typical, lead generation, direct response ads, et cetera, which were good. I said, where are you getting your referrals from? Other contractors. And I was like, all right, well, how about we run a competition where whichever contractor refers you the most business over a set period, you're going to give them a new truck for their business.
Oh, wow.
Right. Now, my guy's business partner literally, to give you the polite version, had kittens over that idea, thought I was the biggest idiot in the world. And I said, humor me. Look at your numbers. And this is a big thing. The numbers don't lie. Leads, conversions, whatever. The numbers don't. I said, look at your own numbers, right? I think like at the time, what it was going to cost them 17,000, 18,000 new or 350 a month as a rough example if they were to lease it away. So they eventually put their big boy pants on and tested the offer. And they did 100,000 net on that project after expenses and buying the truck.
Oh, wow.
Right. That's the sort of stuff that I do. And I actually like it more for, B2C customers.
Yeah.
You can smash their business really, really quickly when you present them in a different way.
I mean, the thing is that what I'm getting from you is that, if you just kind of look at your business very granularly in terms of what you're doing, you could probably find something that makes you a little bit different or that you can present. I take a lot of things for granted in my business. I'm like, oh, people know this. And oftentimes when I'm talking to a prospect and I say something very simple, like, oh, these types of declines, you can do this with them and you'll convert like 5-10% of them. They're like, what? Oh my God, that's crazy. And I'm like, oh, it kind of comes second nature. So it's interesting to have somebody almost kind of take a look at this and walk through it, almost create it like an SOP kind of what you do and find something in there that, most people don't know. So that's a really interesting kind of glass to look through your business, right? Just kind of look at it from the and the thing is, though, I feel like this is something that you would need somebody like you or somebody else that's not kind of in the day to day, or, like I've been doing what I do for 15 years. I'm probably going to miss a couple of steps. I create SOPs for my team, and sometimes I skip half the process. I'm like, oh, they already know that. They don't need to do that, So that's something that's something that a lot of marketers or people who are involved in their business kind of forget, is sometimes look at the basics. But even in small businesses, like you're saying, there's opportunity to kind of create so much growth with very little change to what you're doing. It doesn't cost a lot of money. What do you think gives you the biggest bang for your buck? Like if I'm kind of starting out, and obviously I don't know much about what's going to convert best. Like what would I test first? Would I test an email list first? Like maybe buy a small email list off somebody or so. I don't know if people do that still. I shouldn't say that, but illegally, of course, you don't want to ruffle any feathers, but what would be my first kind of foray into getting customers? Like the thing that you see always pays the most.
That's a really, really good question. People still do buy lists. And obviously if you can purchase an email list legitimately, right, then you need to warm them up, obviously. But the good thing about that email list that's legit of the ideal prospects that you want to be targeting, then you can upload it into Facebook for a lookalike audience. Mm-hmm. Start to run some traffic. Doesn't have to be a lot of money per day. And also other, what Facebook groups are already out there which have your ideal customers in there. I don't mean go in there and spam. You'll get kicked out very, very quickly. Yeah. If you go in and add value, people are going to reach out to you. And then it's all about the relationship. Most people want to go from, first date to marriage right away.
Do you think that like somebody starting out in the industry should maybe not necessarily focus on a niche, but focus on one type of style writing? And why did you choose email? It seems like I will say, full disclosure, it seems like email is what everybody's promoting now in terms of copy. It's like, oh, I'm an email copywriter. I'm an email copy. I'm not hearing very many long form. So I feel like I would be a contrarian and be like, I'm going to be the long form copywriter, just to be different. But like, why focus on email, and how easy is it for you to say, if somebody says, hey, I want to hire you, Nabeel, to write me a sales letter? Is that something that you would say yes to, or no, I'm only comfortable with email?
I mean, it is something that I would say yes to.
Okay.
It's not that like if you want me to write a piece of copy, I'll write you a piece of copy. No big deal. And I have written like entire packages before. So it's like not something that's going to be difficult to do. And the reason why I ended up mostly doing email is just that's how you get a client and you get another client and then you get a reputation. And, if most of your clients come from referrals, like that's how they're recommending you. Right. Okay. So like I'll have a client where, for example, I'm, handling not just their emails, but all of their organic content. Right. And maybe that client runs a mastermind, and, the mastermind attendees are talking, and it's like, hey man, I love your emails. Who do you like? Who writes your emails? Or who writes your copy? Oh, it's Nabeel. And then they get referred to you and they might need help with an email copywriter. So That's one email copywriter. Then you do another good job for them, and they recommend you to another person. And you end up just having a bunch of like email copywriting clients, and that's what your case studies end up as. And so now, like, you're now the email marketing guy, even though like you never intended to end up with that niche. But the reason why email marketing is being promoted a lot is because it's easy to fulfill. A lot of people don't do a lot with email, even though like if you're in the direct response space, like email is our bread and butter, right? That's where like the money is made. But a lot of like, course creators, coaches, like, you'd be surprised at how little they do with email, even if they're spending like a shitload of money on paid traffic. Like their CRM is like 10,000 contacts that they haven't emailed past the like whatever the fuck follow-up sequence that they have for their webinar funnel, right? Yeah. They might email them like once a month if their sales team's calendar is dry. And so like you just show up and send like, an email a week, and suddenly you're like adding like 30 to 50K of additional revenue because they never used to email their list. And so it's easy to fulfill. A lot of people aren't doing a lot with email. And it's also easy to teach, right? Because like, and not only that, like if I'm reaching out to you, Maria, and I'm saying, hey, Maria, I'm a long form copywriter. I'll write you a nice sales letter for direct paynet. You're like, and I'm coming in cold off of the street, right? Like, who the fuck am I? Like, why would you trust me with such a critical piece of copy? That's so like, it also, you have sometimes new copywriters will position themselves as launch copywriters. You have to understand how these jobs are hired out, right? You're not gonna go give your launch package to somebody who came in as a cold email or a cold DM, right? You're going to talk to your especially if you're a serious entrepreneur, you're going to talk to your mastermind members, people are in coaching programs with. Hey, I've got a launch coming up. I need some copyright written. Who do you know? Who wrote your copy? And so that's how those jobs are given out. And so it's much harder if you're a new copywriter to get a job as writing a long form sales page. Even though if you do know how to write long form sales pages, pretty much every piece of copy it becomes much easier because once you have the sales page, you pretty much have every other piece of copy that you could probably write because it's like just tiny like micro pieces of the sales page.
You're taking snippets of it and making it into an email.
Exactly. And so that's why you have a lot of people trying to be email copywriters or coaches trying to teach email copywriting.
Copywriting isn't going anywhere in 2024, even if AI is making bigger leaps. Let me know down in the comments below how you expect the copywriting industry to evolve this year. And if you found value from the expert copywriters in this episode, then don't forget to like and subscribe.